In 2018, I shut down our office. Nobody was allowed to sit next to each other anymore. 2 years later, every company in the world was forced to do the same with COVID, and almost all of them have a shitty culture today. We didn't. In fact, that single decision in 2018 turned into our biggest growth advantage ever. And here's what nobody tells you. Remote can give you more freedom. It can give your people more freedom. It can improve attrition, so more people stay for longer with your company, the good ones. You will get access to better people. I don't think it will save so much money, to be honest. More about that in a second. And it unlocks you as a founder to build a company that you actually dream of. Let me tell you why I think that, and the system that made me build a company that is 100% remote, that is worth more than $100 million, and that has a culture which is stronger than we ever had in my previous businesses before in the office. When I look back and analyzed what was it that we did right since 2018, I came up with 5 principles that drove our culture and success. So let me share them with you now. The first one is the setup. Let me explain. There are 5 different ways to set up your company. On-site, multi-site. So on-site means you have one office in whatnot, London, New York, wherever you are. Multi-site means, you have an office in Barcelona, you have an office in London, you have an office in New York, you have an office in LA. Then you have satellite. In satellite, you have an office, but not everyone is in the office. People are dialing in from another country, other cities, other locations, but you have some people that are in the office. Then you got remote first, and you got remote only. So what is remote first? Remote first means that everyone is remote. You're not allowed to be next to each other in an office. There's no office. But people are in the same time zones, more or less. In our case, we have a policy where up to 6 hours before or 6 hours ahead, people can join our team. With that, either in the morning or in the afternoon, there's an overlap where people can communicate on Slack, people can join meetings, and so on and so forth. That's remote first. Remote only means, you know what the interesting thing with remote only is? It was invented by McDonald's, where you have your burger venue, and when a shift ends, then they clean up everything, they lock up everything, they make everything according to protocol done, that when the next shift comes, everything is in order to set everything up again and then continue. So what does it mean? In a remote only setup, there would be no collaboration necessarily. Someone could be on Hawaii and the other person could be in Europe, or let's say Australia and London, doesn't matter. The point is, if someone does something and finishes it, the other person that is async somewhere in another country 10 hours away, who cares, can continue with that work. They don't have to talk to each other. That's remote only. What I learned over the last 20 years in business is this one works really well on site. I love it. You have this crazy culture where people are just feeling it and vibing it, especially when you start something early on. If you're, I would say, in your 20s and you want to crush it and work 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, I think onsite is just perfect because it's contagious. The vibe and the culture in the office to just get shit done and build something. Multi-site makes sense when your customers are there. So I would give this an orange because you always have a headquarter which is calling the shots. Let's take Amazon, right? Seattle is the headquarter. They make all the decisions there. And then Amazon Germany, they just get the instructions from the US and they have to localize it to the market. So they don't feel on eye level with the headquarter. So I give it an orange. Then you have satellite, which is what I also call, let's say this, I call this the COVID setup. Because that's what most companies have today. They have still an office, some people are meeting there, then people dial in, it's no problem, right? They're at home. And you have to schedule to meet the right people in the office, otherwise it will be a surprise who you meet in the office. So this is what I learned in my career and what I'm also hearing from many other founders. This is the worst. Why? Because if you have people in the office doing a meeting, and then some people dial in that are usually not in the office, maybe even another country, they will never be part of the conversation after the call ends. So the water cooler conversation before, after, the joke that was being made in the room, it just feels different. They never feel part of the team or the culture. And you always feel like, I should be more in the office, I should be closer to them, but you don't want that because you want to be remote. In German, we say it's not fish, not meat. It's not good. And then you also have these people that are presenting really, really strong in meetings. And then the introverts and the people who are dialed in, they just have a disadvantage compared to these people. But then looking at the results, usually it's the other way around, right? So person that shines in the meeting is not necessarily the person that in the end delivers the best. Okay, then remote first. What we do, I think is really good. Talk about that in the next 10 minutes. To give you one example, what's not allowed. You're not allowed to sit next to each other ever. So this is also how we started. When we said like, hey, let's go remote first. We were still sitting in an office. that in 2018. And any meeting, people had now to go home or somewhere else because they were not allowed to sit next to each other in a call. Why? Because I wanted to avoid the water cooler conversations and the jokes and the conversations before and after the call. So you can sit in the office and work silently there, but in a remote first setup, we also have that. We have an allowance for a co-working space. So if you don't want to be at home because you feel lonely there, you can go to a co-working space and work there with other people, and that's paid. So if that's an issue, or let's say you have kids at home, it's also crazy, and you want to be outside home, then you can also go to a co-working space. That's not a problem. The point is, everyone has to dial in and has to use the tools like Slack so that everyone is on eye level. The people that are in the same city, they could meet in the same co-working space and dial in into the meeting at the same time. But that is not allowed because it will create this second culture where they belong together. They're like a clique, they're a group, a pack, but then the other people are not, right? Remote only, I will give it a black circle because I just don't know. I don't want to have that because I love to communicate with the team. The team has a great culture, a great vibe. I like to join calls. And if all of a sudden the standard is now that there's no more meetings, there is no more communication, and everyone just does the thing, finishes their work in a way that the next person can handle it. There are some pros to it, but I just don't want to have that culture. So for that reason, I haven't done it, haven't tried it, don't want to, therefore it's black. If someone has experiences with that, feel free to share in the comments. Would love to hear that. Okay, so with that, I like these two most. On-site and remote first. So two things before we move on. One is, if you have this setup here, satellite, it just feels shit. You got two options. I think if I were the founder of this company that is currently in a satellite COVID setup still, I cannot get the people back into the office, I would force to either transition to on-site or to transition to remote first. Why? Because I have everyone at the desk. Okay, some people quit. That's all right. Some people want to be in the office. They want to go every day to work. So then create that culture. You, of course, have to be in a city where you have people that can be really strong. In a remote first setup, what we do, I can hire globally and I can hire strong people from South Africa that are great in comms, great price value, completely on their toes, which I would never get in, let's say, Munich, Germany, where I am, even though there are great people in Munich, Germany, but not the people that I need. So it depends a bit on your business. If you have a very local business serving local clients in your local language, yeah, maybe on-site is good. Maybe then go for that. If you serve clients internationally and you want to have more freedom in where you work, how you work, when you work, I think remote first is the way to go for. To have a great culture with satellite, I don't think it's possible. So your company will always be overtaken by either the guys that are all in committed in their office or by people that have an effective remote organization. So you're bound to fail if you continue with what you're doing today. One more thing, when we did this, right? Let me do that in blue. We went on-site to remote first. That's what we did in 2018. Here's what happened. We had a ton of attrition. We lost almost half of the team. They quit. Why? Because they wanted to be in an office. They wanted to be at a meeting room with 8 others talking about stuff on a whiteboard, then having water cooler conversations, going to lunch together and all of these things. They left. They didn't want to spend their time at home. And that sucked because we lost some really strong people. But we found much stronger ones. For example, developers in Eastern Europe that didn't feel like tucked in a satellite setup, but on eye level. So we had edge compared to other companies. We found really good marketing people in the UK or expats living in Spain from the UK or also from the US, speaking the native language and really know how to be commercially minded and how the core, in our case, our core markets are the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK, how to serve these markets. Yeah, so there was a benefit. It just improved everything. So second point, therefore, is attrition will happen. John is going to quit. Sue is going to quit as well. It's fine. You will not get this transition done without any pain. But what you have on the other side is so good that in our case, I would do it again over and over. Okay, so that's the first one on setup. I hope that was helpful. Now let's talk about a really interesting one. Second, you will get an edge. What do you mean by that? Before we talked about how we live our remote culture, we had 200 applications inbound. Of course, like you do as well, active search is great. We reach out to people. We have a watchtower. We want to attract and find the right person and we have to hunt them. Recruiting is sales. So you go after who you need. Still, applications coming in is an important KPI. We had 200 applications per month before we started focusing on our edge. What I mean by that, I will show you with a second. Today, we have 10,000 applications per month. Let me actually show you the data. Why not? See, this was early 2022, on average 225 applications per month. And then we proceeded, so moved forward to the next interview with about 25%. Then we talked on LinkedIn about how to become a great remote company with a great culture, which is what we did way longer than everyone else. And we did it intentionally. And we increased our applications per month to 10,384 applications. And we moved forward with 350. Now you can say, okay, you got a lot of crap, maybe, but I don't think so. What I would say changed is, yes, we were only proceeding and moving forward with 3% of the applications, but our internal standard increased, meaning that we have such a high bar that we only talk to people where we think they would raise the bar. And interestingly, also internally, if someone in the team does not perform, or if I think, okay, this is good, very good maybe, but it's not outstanding, could be better, then of course I know that I always have 50 people, 100 people that are more than happy and really strong to fill in that position. So with that, we became much more of a performance culture. It was a huge impact. Don't underestimate the impact of having a strong employer brand to hire almost anyone that you want. Let's talk about the edge again. The edge is remote best practices from a true remote first company. Of course, you have to find your edge. What this edge did is there are so many people out there who want to work for a true remote first company, not just some like, yeah, how many days per week do I have to come to the office with that weird satellite culture that everyone hates, but a professionally, intentionally well done remote setup so that people can live in their little shed, in their cabin, in the woods, right next to their lake and the mountains with their family, have a good time there, and crush it in the business. So these people, they will only work for remote true first companies. And with that, we got a ton of applications because we get all the inbound demand of people that want that and they don't want to go back into the office. They don't want to be part of that shitty satellite culture. And that just changed everything for us. Okay, so that's Edge. Let's see, I got a couple more minutes to share a few nuggets and then I got to go. Let me just know in the comments if you want to have more information. The next one is fair compensation. Long time ago, we were just trying to negotiate the best deal that we could get. Today, we have geo ranges. So let's say USA is 100% of a salary. So let's say it's 100K, right? So if you would find that same person in Pakistan that has a geo range of 40%, this person would get 40K. It also depends a bit on positions. For example, with developers, it's more of a global setup right now where people can work from anywhere, everywhere. And then we have, for example, a minimum threshold of 80%. So that means the developer from Pakistan would actually get 80K. Both of these compensations are crazy because in Pakistan, the local price for someone might be $150 per month, right? But of course, we only attract the ones that speak proper English, that are exposed to the global job market, and that know how to attract and convert international customers or international employers. With that, the thought that remote is so cheap would say is not really the case. Maybe a little bit, but then once you do team events, which we also talk about in a second, they become very pricey. Easily 6 figures, and 70% of our costs for these team events are the transport cost, the flights. So geo ranges, the next one is salary bands. That means we have something we call starter. When, for example, let's say it's a senior developer. On a senior developer scale, you can be starter, established, and master. Yeah, so down here is master. And that then maybe goes from, for senior developer, I don't know, I have to look into the numbers, 70K to 110. Okay, let's say 100. To make it easy. So people then can grow inside their senior developer position. They also have a career track. More about that as well in a second. All of this data here about salaries is coming from real compensation data. You can buy that data. There's organizations that have actual data from lots of companies and then they know what the actual compensation is so that you compensate fairly. Okay, next one, 4. Career and freedom. So we want to give our people freedom and a career. And most startups don't have that. They're just like, yeah, you work on the job. That's it. That is not going to make anyone happy. And let me show you something real quick. See what you say. This is our career framework. You can start as a junior, then a specialist. And then the question is, do you want to go into the leadership track or you want to go into double down on your individual contributor skills? The interesting thing is that in the end, if you're like a super expert, a principal, you can still become a VP. It's not a one-way road. And then people can go, see this starting, established, mastering. And then for all these positions, there is exactly defined on the hard skill, soft skill, and leadership side what's required to achieve that. So if you are an IC2 specialist today, you know exactly what your options are to become a better specialist, to become a better manager, and to improve even within that position at that level. Okay, cool. Let's talk about the next one, the final one. This is interesting for you maybe because you think, oh yeah, we're so remote, we don't care about in-person events. No, we love in-person events. Without in-person events, it would not work. And we do too, an all hands. The all hands is 1 to 2 times a year, all hands, and then team events that are self-organized by the teams, often also squad. Yeah, so you could also call it squad events. Budget is on the company, and they can crank through a project to get it done. The all hands here, the team meeting, is to bond. So we don't do strategy presentations or all of these things. Everything that can be done remotely is done remotely. This one is to bond, to connect. So we do activities. We usually have a wedding venue rented where everyone is sleeping together in 80 beds. Not together, but my point is it's about bonding. It's about connecting. Okay, so that's really important. And these events, they're very intentional again. They're very social and they're actually a lot of fun. And you travel the globe. We've done Split, Croatia, Greece, Athens, Crete as well, Portugal, Lisbon, Faro, all of these. So these events are just the glue between the remote setup. And without it, it would not work. So the truth is, the moment we went remote, everything changed. But the real magic wasn't the setup. It was who we brought into that system and how we composed the whole system. Remote doesn't fix bad hiring, but it can help you to attract even stronger people. So it multiplies it. So then the question obviously is, how do you find people who thrive in this environment? People who don't need managing. People who make everyone around them better, that are proactive. And that's where the real unfair advantage begins. When your entire team is built from A players who think like owners. So in the next video, I will show the exact system that we still use today to spot world-class talent before anyone else does. If you're serious about building a remote-first company that actually wins, you can't miss that one. So just watch it. It's right here.